decided to use her in your advanced style book and your advanced style blog. And from that point onwards, you two became bosom buddies.
Inseparable.
Harry, over to you. Take it from there. Introduce Sarah Jane, one of your bosom buddies.
Of course.
And have the very, very best time possible. Ari, welcome.
Thank you so much. Oh, first of all, I just want to say thank you so much for taking your time out to celebrate one of my favorite people and one of my best friends and muses, Sarah Jane Adams. I think we're all, having a hard time right now. And if we could all just take a moment to breathe and just think about all the people who are suffering right now, because we're so lucky that we can even take this moment to talk about the things we're going to talk about. So sending love to everyone and healing for, people in your lives that are having a hard time right now. We totally understand that. And, have been Sarah's, her whole book launch was canceled, of course, because of the pandemic. And so we were trying to find a creative way to share this beautiful piece of work that Sarah created called Life in a Box. And it truly is, some of you already might have it. If you do, you can hold it up to the screen and we can give her a kind of a round of applause, because, she really deserves to be celebrated right now. Thank you so much for doing that, everyone. Sarah Jane Adams is my dear friend. She's a antique jewelry dealer, mother, style icon, rebel, fighter. I mean, she's so many things. A muse to me, and now author. And I want to congratulate her on this beautiful, beautiful book. And just on a silly note, we can start off by, we were talking before this, Sarah and I became friends 5 years ago because I saw a photo of her on Instagram, and I happened to be in Australia and we met, and she came to New York, and then we talk almost every day because we realize we have so much in common. And by reading this book, which is an exploration of objects that Sarah has kept and collected throughout her entire lifetime, and she is a collector, and the meaning behind those objects, and they really tell, bless you, a beautiful story about her life and her life's journey. She didn't want to make a book about style. She didn't want to make a book that was superficial. Now, Sarah, tell me, I was just going to say, you can tell us that funny story about the shirt if you want, in Us and Joshua Tree, and then we'll start talking about the book.
Yes, I'm wearing this shirt. I'm seeing what Ari's wearing. I must just digress here because we hadn't discussed what we were each going to wear. Can you stand up, and we will both stand up together, because we actually have coordinated without even planning. We've just, he knows my color is red. Anyway,
I knew your color was red.
You know my color's red, but you didn't know I was going to wear this shirt, which is a bow, and you're wearing your bow tie.
Well, we bought that shirt together.
We did buy this shirt together. I'm wearing this in honor of you, Ari.
And Sarah wore that with my dog's blanket for a shoot in Joshua Tree.
Yes, it was a shoot that we did in Joshua Tree when Ari was taking me out to that ancient land. I just also want to interject here. I'm on Gadigal land here in Australia, so I just want to acknowledge the elders in particular and people. Anyway, so yes, that was another ancient land, and that was an amazing day. And that was a day where very rarely do I expose much flesh for various reasons. That's a whole other story. But it was a day that it was so hot, and I mean, I'm not embarrassed or shy about my body. And I was doing quick changes in the desert. Do you remember, Ari? Mm-hmm. And there were the occasional cars going past, and I said, "Oh shit, give me something." And I held my hat up because I was nude. Well, I had my trousers on, but I was nude. And you took the picture of me with your cowboy hats, kind of being. Yeah, and that's turned out to be, and my husband also took one of my belly, and that's kind of more where I got the wrinkles and stripes idea from, because I have
we'll touch upon that in a few minutes. I wanted to ask you, obviously, how this book came about. You've been on this journey for the last 5 years that I guess you were thrust into unwillingly, but really, it's been a lot of exploration for you, and you've had incredible adventures. You've become a model and traveled the world and worked with various brands and met people who you feel a kinship with. And I know a lot in this book is about your having felt different your entire life. So it's great that obviously these last few years you've really met people who
Yeah.
understand and love you. Now,
Yeah.
how did this book come about, and what was your intention with the book?
The book came about, as you say, yes, I have been asked to write a number of times to write a book about style and fashion, and it's actually not my realm or something that really interests me, the fashion aspect. And it came to me because I basically wanted to write a book for my children, because I'm not a hoarder in any way. I'm quite minimalist. And as I've gotten older, I've cleared properties and got rid of stuff, the big stuff. Because I feel that we're all surrounded by way too much big stuff. And it got to the stage where I had these couple of suitcases with all these treasures. Well, there's rubbish, really. It's a book about a load of old rubbish, basically, let's face it. But it's all these treasures are still there. And my children have sort of grown up, because I've had shadow boxes on the walls with some of these little bits and pieces on them. Because I've been someone who's traveled a lot, I have kept small mementos to remind me of things rather than loads of photographs and whatever. So I just decided that I wanted, so Kelly, darling Kelly Doust, who was the editor of the book, she approached me and wanted me to write something. And I said, I can't write the book that you're wanting me to write, but I do have a book in me. And she said, okay. So we discussed it and put forward a proposal. And she said, I think that's a great idea. And so then we were trying to work out the format. And because I've worked in an auction house for some years, and it was all small objects, and because eventually we may even decide to sell these things or put them in a museum, donate them to something or whatever. I haven't got to that stage yet. There's a couple of things that we're thinking about. I decided to write it as an auction catalogue. Actually, Kelly showed me this weird little thing that she'd got. She's brilliant. She's a bit like me. She knows, not brilliant, but she knows where everything is in her house, which I do too. And she went and fetched this little brochure, and she said, this is a little story, like a novel of an auction catalogue. And I burst into tears and I said, that's it. That's it.
I really love the aspect of exploring a life through objects, because I related to you in the fact that, first of all, we both had a grandmother that we were very close to. So in reading that book, what I want to ask about Granny Wynne, but also, even like mundane things like my grandmother's green stapler from the 1960s, like, to me, that object, like, it was just something special. And I have her gold and rose vase of hers, and I have all these like little journals of hers, and all those objects have meaning. Every day I open the door with the key holder that she used. It's broken, and just like the meaning that objects can have. And I love estate sales, and I know you loved collecting things when you were younger, and the meaning that they took upon. And I feel like the book is a really story about owning who you are, inhabiting your body and your strength, and being resilient and being a rebel and being rebellious. But tell us a little bit about your grandmother.
Nanny Wynne, she was a mad eccentric. I loved her to bits. She was I won't say too much, because her birth situation is quite interesting and it's very detailed in the book. But she and I sort of had almost like a secret friendship. We were confidants to one another. And she loved animals. She was the first animal liberationist that I was aware of. She used to write letters every year when the Grand National was on in England, and the horses used to have to jump over these steeplechases, and they would have broken legs and have to be euthanized. And she would write all these letters, and she used to save the bears. But she used to go for mad, long walks, even into her 80s. She'd go off across the fields, striding out in her wellies, and she just loved nature, the fresh air, animals. She was greatly misunderstood as well, I think. She was a really gorgeous woman, a very big influence in my life, although I only spent time with her when I was very young, because when I went to boarding school, I didn't really see much of anybody.
I feel like for you, it was your Nanny Wynne, and then your teddy bear that you had, and these were, and then the objects that you collected became your friends, because
yes.
I don't want to talk too much about what's in the book, but did you feel quite alone as a child?
Oh, very alone as a child, yes. I mean, my birthing was a strange situation. Again, that's revealed in the book. And because my father was in the Royal Air Force, we used to move around a lot. And I never really met, I've always been a loner, and I still am, Ari. That's my comfort zone, is being very self-isolating, which I think a lot of people find strange, because I apparently am a flamboyant dresser, but my dress is just something that's happened over the years. It's not a construct as such. But yes, yeah. I've always been very content being alone, and I've always loved to have time to entertain myself and to explore the inner mechanisms of who I am and what the world is around me. And I think that's one of the reasons I love to travel, because when I'm traveling, I'm completely anonymous and completely, really invisible when I travel, because people don't look, I'm an old woman. People don't look at you when you're old. And I'm actually really happy with that, because being stared at when you're young because you're whatever, I always found that to be something of a burden. But yes, I'm just happy in my own company, as you are as well. And we're both a couple of weirdos, yeah. Really.
I'm a lot more social in a lot of ways, but I totally feel like, being someone who felt like they were different, which I'm sure we all have felt at different times in our lives, that as a young person looking back, it was almost something beneficial to that, like having that time to yourself to have allow your imagination to work, because I didn't have a lot of friends growing up, and I was very different than most people and eccentric and strange. And I had my grandmother like you did. And, we looked for objects, we played, we made up games, we wrote stories. And I think that what I really loved, one of the things I loved about your book, because it was kind of in line with my journey, is something that you've loved your entire life, which is objects and jewelry especially. You really learn how deep your relationship to jewelry is in this book, from first finding objects in your yard and in those excavations to the little pieces that you'd collect. But jewelry really became your source of independence. It was the thing that allowed you to be free from the restrictions of your life. And it feels like you're constantly, especially when you were younger, but you still continue that quest for freedom. Like, I think you're always looking for more and more freedom and understanding of who you are. Can you talk a little bit about the various, it's cataloged in the book, but like just some of the, touch upon the few moments of like, this was when I first felt free, but like it changes throughout life, because then you finally become established and then you're looking for freedom again.
Yes.
But
I think it's the human,
and also what place did jewelry play in that?
The biggest, apart from my children, apart from when I had my children, my relationship with jewelry has been the biggest relationship I've had in my entire life. And it's not monetarily based. It never started out that way. I was very fortunate because of my passion for antique pieces in particular, and what they represent, and what can be used, and Deborah will, I'm sure, relate to this as well, what can be used as jewelry, and what can be used to send messages, and what jewelry can be made from. It's so evocative, and it can be public or very private, and it can be private but still public. There are so many different, and this is why I never wear jewelry now, because if I do, the jewelry that I choose to wear is so loaded with meaning. I have a fabulous jade blade, which isn't even featured in the book because that's so important to me, and I didn't want to share that, but you'll see it in some photographs, and that is my...
But let us know also how the jewelry literally gave you your freedom. Tell a little bit about
my freedom. Well, it gave me my freedom because I was living on the smell of an oily rag, working. Basically, I was living with a boyfriend. Well, I first felt that I had freedom, which was nonsense really, when I finished university and my parents were no longer supporting me. And then I moved immediately down to London and moved in with the boyfriend who was a musician. And so we I had immense freedom then, and we would go all around Europe on the road, and I used to do the lighting. I was the lighting technician. And then one day he was signed up with Virgin Records, who were just starting back in those days, and there was no money. And one day I literally had to decide whether to spend my last 20 pence on potatoes or toothpaste. And I thought, this is ridiculous. And in the meantime, I'd been going to jumble sales on my little bicycle for a year and a half. And I'd gathered all this weird and wonderful, I mean, even this scarf, this is a Liberty shawl from those days, you know, so I'd gathered all this stuff, and I just looked around our apartment, and I said, I'm just going to see how I can earn some money. And so I bought the Evening Standard, and in the back of the Evening Standard, there was an advert for the new Covent Garden Market, which was opening. And I rang them up and booked a stall, and that was the beginning of my business. And it wasn't, of course, I didn't start with jewelry, because that took time to learn, time to find, time to understand, as well as time to be able to afford. But that was the beginning of my relationship, well, with being an antique dealer. And because I was always, and I don't like to use the generic word gypsy, but because I'm always on the move, I knew I wanted to do something that was small. I knew that I was always fascinated with the minutiae of things rather than the big stuff. So it was, and I've always loved rocks and fossils. I'm a gemologist and a diamond grader and so on. And so that's kind of why it became jewelry. And jewelry, the searching for jewelry gave me an immense freedom, because it meant that I had to have courage to go and explore where women certainly weren't very often seen. You know, there were very few females doing what I was doing back in those days. I didn't even think about it. I didn't even think, oh, I'm a girl, I can't do this. None of that has ever held me back. You know, I've never let my gender influence anything I've done, really. You know, I guess if I had been born, if gender fluidity had been happening in those days, I probably would have been one of these people who people didn't know whether I was a boy or a girl because of the way I dressed, and because of, and so that's a bit of a sidetrack. But so jewelry gave me freedom to travel.
Definitely, the book explores your relationship to your body, your gender, to other people, and explores like the history of the time period that you've lived in. You know, I think it's such a deep book with so many fascinating clues into your life, but also to like the times that you were living in, and musically, and the people you were surrounded by, and you know, Princess Diana's passing, and so many things. It's just
HIV situation, that pandemic. I mean, it's just repeating itself. But the thing that I wanted to do, Ari, to answer your question earlier, when I was writing this book, I wanted it to appeal is the wrong word, because I'm not into salesmanship, but I wanted it to be relatable to people of all types, all ages, all cultures, all everything. I wanted everybody on this planet to find something in this book that they could relate to, because it's basically a book about a life. My life is no more special or different than anybody else's life, but and that's one of the reasons that when I first was given the book, the first copy I was given, I actually had to fly to India. You take over. And present my first copy to my Indian family. Anyway, but the point is that my Indian family is a very extended family, ranging from little ones who are 3, 4, 5 to elders who I've known for 40 years and who I knew when they were first sort of 40. So, you know, they are elders now. And every time we went to see them, and this is honestly the truth, every time we went to see them, one member of the family would have that book and would be reading it or looking at the pictures. And the little children were fascinated by my colored crayons and Tessie Bear. And so for young people, I'm hoping there are stories and aspects of old people of my generation's age, so that they won't know, like for example, the milk bottles. You know, why is this woman written about a gold milk bottle top? It's absolute rubbish. Yet the message within that story, I hope it talks about the inside, how we feel, as opposed to the outside, how we look. It's an historical referencing to milk being delivered, and you know, a story about the olden days, and a funny story about weird, you know, like I've tried to really make each section relatable to different aspects of the population in different ways.
It's beautiful, and it definitely has the aspect of being so beautifully relatable to so many people. And I know that because of, you know, it's in the book, but your parents had a lot of expectations of you to be a certain way, you know.
Suck up. That's always how
you know, you were stifled in a lot of ways in terms of expression and school. And
Yeah.
so a lot of your journey, like we said, has been about rebellion. And and I think that you really are a role model for people of all ages to rebel against what people expect out of them. And I wanted to talk a little bit about rebellion, and then obviously what you've been doing the past few years. Now we can talk about you know, the hashtag that you created that's gone viral, that's really empowered a lot of people in so many ways. What I love about your social media and everything you do, it has such authenticity to it. And you know, there's always a message behind it. It's not about clothing, it's not about buying, it's not about representing something other. It's about being who we are. And you allow a lot of us to be who we are. So
I sometimes wonder, you know, when you're doing it, you sort of feel as though you're living in a box, and it's like, let me out. You know, like after we've done this, I think I'm going to put up a picture and say, are we done yet? You know, because it's like, this has been such a big, but yes, I think I am a rebel, but I also truly believe that we have to be very, very conscious and thoughtful about what we're rebelling against, or why are we doing this, and what is the best method to do it. And I've learned, and when I was young, I was very bombastic, and a lot of people think I still am, but trust me, when I was young, I was, you know, I was out there, and nobody had a fucking chance. If they, you know, like, it's, okay, see you later, I'm out of here, you know, like I was pretty intense. And I learned through growing older, and I learned this from my mother, it's all in the art of timing. And also, I learned this from school, and there's a story in there about when I had a phone call from the Young Communists Association. But I learned how to work from within. So basically, how to infiltrate your opposition. I learned how to play the game, and I learned how to know when I'm playing the game. And that's why I'm really brilliant at winding people up. I'm such a bitch. But I've learned how to infiltrate. No, because I learned this, Ari, through working in the business in a man's world. I had to, it was survival. I would have been out on the streets. I had to learn how to infiltrate and sit and shut the fuck up and learn how to play the game, and know when I was playing the game, and then also know when you can actually come out and break, and that's when you are a different kind of a rebel. You can be a rebel from within as well as from opposition.
And tell me about, how did you come up with this movement and embracing of, tell us a little about my wrinkles are my stripes.
Shall I show you?
Yeah, show it.
The first photograph was the first picture of that. Okay, so my wrinkles are my stripes. Everyone assumes it was actually about my face. I don't give a shit about wrinkles on my face, and I don't, you know, like that's irrelevant. As all of it's irrelevant. But I'll show you what started it. And I took the first photograph, and it's on Sarah My Jewels, because this is way before I started my wrinkles and my stripes. It's a long time back. It will be probably 3 or 4 years ago. This is this first photograph. And it's a picture that I took when I was in your apartment in New York, and you had that little tiny bathroom with a mirror straight, you'd open the door and there is that mirror. Do you remember? And I walked in there, and somebody, Yoppie, remember Yoppie? She'd given me this really short jumper, and I love wearing things when people give them to me, but often they're not quite what I would normally wear. And I put this on, and I went into the bathroom, and I walked, and I stood in by the mirror, and this jumper came to about here, right? And so I'm standing there. I got my jeans on that were low-ride jeans. I've got my Adidas trackies on under this to keep warm. I'd had my low-ride jeans on that kind of looked like this, and this top kind of went like that. And I was going to take a photograph of it. I don't know if you can see, but I've got a really, really wrinkly belly because I've had twins, and all of this is twin belly. And that's what my wrinkles and my stripes is acknowledging, this, that you know, any female who's had a child is going to have a wrinkle on and it's such a proud thing to, you know, like, how can you have any negativity around that?
And then it became a bigger, I think, message about just embracing who we are.
Yes, exactly.
And being proud. Remember when we were in the Gold Coast, and I remember we did a tea party and a book signing, and they wrote about us saying, my wrinkles are so hot right now. And I really love that, because when do you see that in the media, that wrinkles are so hot right now? Christine, we only have a few more minutes, right? I want to say one last thing, and I'm so sorry, guys, because I felt this huge responsibility to really represent Sarah's book. I hope I did an okay job, because it's such a beautiful book and we have such a short amount of time to talk. But, you know, it's interesting how you always wanted to be invisible and sort of straight away from the spotlight, and your style you talk about in the book was a way to sort of hide yourself, but it became, I guess through me, unknowingly.
Yes. Show us your book, Ari. Show us your book. Show us your book. Sorry to interrupt. This is Ari's latest book, Advanced Love. Look at that.
It's a book of love stories, and there's lots of Australian couples. You can find it at readings, but that's not the point. The point is that something that was so personal to you, and I understand now, reading the book, why you don't consider yourself a fashion icon or style icon, that everything you have had meaning, and you bought on a journey, or you traded for, or discovered in a box, or, you know, when we were together at the thrift store, someone's given you something, and it's the way you put it together, and it's the punk, and it's the, I mean, obviously you have an incredible sense of aesthetics, you're an artist, but, you know, something that you wanted to become allow you to be invisible has made you very visible. And I know that that's not the most comfortable feeling for you. So what do you do now with this platform? You've been, you know, for the next, or are you just going to let it go?
I might press the delete button. I don't know. I've always kept on because there's always been another, I've thought there's a reason. I don't believe anything happens without, you know, there's no such thing as a coincidence. I've written that in the book. And yet I'm not a political person. I'm not somebody who's going to represent sustainable fashion, or because that's how I've lived my life. I can't just I don't want to just be limited by one topic or one portfolio. So I don't know, Ari. I mean, I think I just want to ride off into the sunset and come and see you, and let's both go and make some beautiful photography in Joshua Tree again. I have no great ambitions in life anymore. I don't think I ever did have ambitions. What?
Neither do I. I never have.
No, I mean, life, and I don't make plans. I don't believe in making plans, because we never know what's going to come to us. We never know what's going to happen. So I don't have plans. I just take one day at a time. So I can't answer that question.
Well,
but thank you.
We have time for some questions. That's okay. If anyone wants to ask questions, type them in, right, Christine? And thank you to all of our friends. We see Lydia and Elka and Mary. I mean, for tuning in.
How do you see who's on? I'm actually going to be brave enough now to see.
I'm going to let you know that you can go to gallery view if you want to. Yes. But Sarah, some questions have been coming through for both of you, and I'm interested to hear the answers. Actually, they're very good questions. There's a lot of people asking me about when did you find out that you had fallen in love with color? When did you find out that that was one of your things? And I guess that makes sense to me, because certainly coming from Melbourne, so many of us down here wear black. That's what we're known for. We wear dark clothes. We don't wear color. But you, Sarah Jane, and you, Ari, have always seemed to be quite a rainbow.
Do you want to go first, Ari?
No, this is your signing, girl.
Oh, okay. Well, for me, I guess it was when I was very, 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 very young, because it was post-war England and everything was made out of blankets, and, you know, there was nothing really in the stores. And I used to go to boarding school, and my boarding school color was navy blue, one of the reasons I never wear blue, and brown, one of the reasons I never wear brown. And those were the colors. But I really discovered color when I discovered Keith Richards and Jimi Hendrix. There's no going back. That's the end of it. Those are my start.
But even looking at your book, like, you know, in the crayons and the objects, I mean, I think we learn about color from the objects around us, and, you know, nature, and, you know,
I was going to say,
exploring.
For me, nature is the first place to look. I mean, even in England and cold places, in the, you know, the daffodils, the color, you just look to nature. I'm looking now out at the tree, the colors, even within one plant, that if you saw them on a color chart, you think, oh, that won't work, but they do, and it does. And that's, but my relationship with color and layering was very fine-tuned when I went to India, because those women, oh my God, the way, their poise, their elegance, their pride, and the mixtures of the color. And I'm really also very fascinated by faded colors and vegetable color. Like, I don't wear primary colors generally. I'll wear vegetable dye colors, and I love faded. I just love faded beauty.
You love a bit of patina.
I'm an antique dealer. That's why I'm an antique dealer.
Yeah. One of the other sort of questions that I'm getting through here, Sarah Jane, is a little bit of a practical one. Are you going to be narrating your story? Is there an audio?
I would love to. I mean, I don't know. We're in the middle of a pandemic.
Yeah.
All the events, everything has been cancelled. So I would adore to do it. I would adore to do it I'd love to. I would love to do that. If somebody talk to me about that, I don't know how we do that.
Yeah,
I'm going to be your agent for a second, and anyone who could help us spread the word about this beautiful book. You know, it's a hard time to get the word out about something beautiful like this, and it's something that you have at home that really. I spent a day with it, and I really truly loved it. So, if anyone could tell their friends about this beautiful book, we'd so appreciate it.
We so would, and I should say that today, if you buy that book from the Readings website, and you put in Readings Events 10, then you do get a discount, and it's actually makes it such a bargain, because it is a warm and glorious book.
Thank you. It's Mother's Day soon. Good one for Mother's Day.
It's perfect for Mother's Day. It's perfect. Yes. But I will. There's a couple more questions here, Sarah, Jamie, and before we just go back to you, Ari, people want to know when you first went to India, and they also want to know. How is it that you got started? How is it that you were so brave to make that first move to get started? To be I don't know. No, I think to be who
just
you
travel on your own and do your thing and have your own business, maybe.
Yeah.
I guess I have no fear. I don't know. It was just I lived in England, and it was the same as now I live in Australia. It was the kind of top end, bottom end of the world, and there was a great big world. And I just needed to go and explore. I've always explored. I've always climbed rocks. I still climb trees, you know, the other day. So it's part of who I am. I'm a big adventurer. And I first went to India. I was looking for, there is a thing in the book about when I first went to India, but it was 40 odd years ago. The first time I was in India, I don't know, here we go. On the 27th of November, 1980, age 25, I set off with an antique dealer boyfriend on my first life-changing journey to India. Have I got time to read this or not, Christine?
Yeah.
Okay, my journal entry for that day reads, arrive Bombay at 6 a.m. local time and make a good luck wish. Out of the plane, we all troop onto an old bus, which takes us 10 yards to the waiting customs, etc. And I think it's really hilarious, 10 yards on a bus. Have to wait 2.5 hours to get through, lots of silly forms and Indians running backwards and forwards, and then someone knocks over the custom man's desk by mistake and everything goes flying. All the Germans are getting stroppy. Even the Indians who have just arrived say it's ridiculous, but I laugh and it's okay. So that was my first journal entry when I landed in India, and that's been, I think, with travel, to answer the question, how did I get started in living the life that I've led? It's by realizing I'm just a tiny little ant. None of it really matters, but also by keeping a sense of humor. I think you have to have a laugh and you have to smile. When people say to me, weren't you frightened going to India? I say, no, because people stare. People stare everywhere. And all you do is you look at them and you smile and they go, oh, and they're so, you know, it's like, of course they're going to stare. I mean, you know, People stare when I'm in bloody Newtown. They're going to stare when I'm in India. And it's the same for everybody. People do stare, but there's nothing wrong with being stared at. There's nothing wrong with not being stared at. That is all your own.
I need to
version
learn
of
that
them.
lesson.
Pardon?
I need to learn that lesson.
You know,
Yes.
the things I think that the great lesson, perhaps the great thing that we can all take from here, from this conversation, from you, Sarah Jane, is that certainly it's just, I have no fear. What's the worst that can happen? That type of attitude.
What's going to happen? If I die, I die. You know, like, to me, yes, I'm not hung up about any of that. I'm ready. Now that I've written this book, I'm ready. And I'm serious. That's why the last photograph of the book, I don't know if people have seen this, but this is the last photograph of the book. And this is me in a yoga pose, which is called Shavasana. And which is corpse pose. So this photograph was a pure fluke.
Bring it up to the lens.
I don't know if you can see, but it's me. But what I need to tell you is that this picture was taken on the pavement, on the road in May Lane, which is where all the graffiti artists go. My husband and I were there taking some photographs of me in the orange dress. And I saw on the curb, I don't know if you can you see these two yellow eyes? These two yellow eyes and a stupa. So this is like almost like the Shiva eyes. And I'm a bit of a Shiva girl. Anyway, and I saw this on the curb, and I said to DT, my husband, I said, DT, just hang on a minute. My husband's a painter and decorator by trade. So there's always drop sheets in the back of the truck. So, and my kid had been doing some graffiti on the walls donkeys years ago. And this is when they're testing the spray. So this is a really, really symbolic picture. And if I had the time, I could go through every single picture in this book and tell you why I chose this picture. None of this has happened by accident, but this is my husband's drop sheet. One of my kids, starting the graffiti, they shake it and they go, and that makes the paint. And here I am in Shavasana in front of the Shiva eyes on the pavement in Sydney.
Well, Sarah, we're not ready for you to go, but it's a beautiful message. We're ready for you to be here, and I know you're not totally comfortable with being celebrated, but no. I celebrate you today, and I celebrate everyone who tuned in. And
thank you, Ari. I love you.
Your love and time with us.
Ari, just to yell out to you. You have changed the way that people have seen what style is. It's something that you have contributed to this world, to the whole world. On behalf of little old fashion-centric Melbourne, thank you so much. I find your work incredibly exhilarating and incredibly important. Thank you. You've got this beautiful new book, which of course you can buy it at readings as well. I wish you so much luck. I know that it must be so shitful there in LA at the moment. And it's such a gift that you have joined us today. Tremendous, tremendous gratitude to you.
Yes,
thank you. Thank you for doing this. And I have so much gratitude to the women that I work with, like Deborah and Elka and all these women who have tuned in, and Sarah, because they're the ones whose stories and style and wisdom that have shaped my life, starting with my grandmother. So it's actually more of an honor and a privilege that they even let me in to do what I do. They're the ones who are making the change more than I am. So, and this book is hopefully...
Everybody needs a mirror, darling.
Own it. Come on. There's conversations we have all the time. Own it, boy.
One more question.
You got to put the music on and have a dance party now in your office. Hi, Deborah.
Hi.
Everyone's. We could all wave at each other.
We could. You know what I'm going to do in a couple of minutes is I'm going to take you all off mute so you can all just yell and cheer.
That'd be lovely.
It'd be so nice. Sarah Jane, can you just very quickly show us what you're reading at the moment? I know that you're reading some pretty extraordinary books at the moment.
Well, I don't read very much. I must admit, I don't read much. But I'm reading, this is a book that my darling friend Kelly gave me for Christmas. Kelly's the editor of my book. So This is a book about bats. You'll know that I have a love for bats. This is a book that I bought when the last time I was in England, my mother accused me of having boarding school syndrome. I had never heard of it, but she said, you've clearly got boarding school syndrome, but at least it made you strong. So here we are. I'm reading that. And then the last one, and the best one, is Sadhguru, who I follow.
So fantastic.
So they're all black. They're all black covers and grey covers. How weird is that? There's a message there somewhere.
There's a complete contrast to you, Sarah Jane. Harry, can you hold up your gorgeous book one more time so that we can all see it so clearly and all rush out and get it? Harry, hold it up. Don't be crazy. There it is.
There it is.
There it is. It's fantastic.
Deborah's in it.
Book. Yes, Deborah's in it. It's a beautiful book. Oh, hey, Harry, you know
Deborah's in your book.
She is. Deborah is mentioned in my book because I made a bangle when I was doing one of Deborah's classes. Can we actually say what we decided to do this morning with regards to the book? You can tell.
Oh yeah. If anyone wants to join in, Sarah, we were starting a little Sarah dress up contest. Oh, thanks, Deborah, for sharing the book. I've started this thing over the past few weeks called the Advanced Style Challenge. Shona did it, and a few other people have dressed up to celebrate older people in your life, and also, dress up like maybe someone from my archive. And so we're if someone dresses up like Sarah in the next few days, she'll be sending them a free copy of the book. We're going to pick one person who really does it up in, one of Sarah's looks. Post it on Instagram with hashtag Advanced Style Challenge and Life in a Box, and tag Sarah on that, and she'll look through them. But yeah, we're doing that. But I think it's time to give her a big clap and say hello to. We can all say hello to each other.
I'm going to unmute everybody on behalf of Readings, on behalf of Murdoch Books. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. To you, Ari, just
thank you, Christine.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, darling.
Thank you.
Now it's going to be chaos for 5.
You can all unmute yourselves.
Deborah,
I'm chaos.
everyone unmute.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you,
Everybody.
Hi, Lydia.
Thank you.
Hi, Shona. Where's Shona?
How enjoyable.
Hi,
Hi, Deborah.
Shona.
This is fabulous.
I'm trying to see. There's one person
The cat.
on the. Yeah. Oh, it's got the.
We should have a dress-up party where we do a huge Zoom like this, and everyone gets together. I haven't done anything like this, so yeah.
Mary's still giving that the thumbs up. Yeah.
That would be a good idea. That would be fun.
Oh, yeah.
Yes,
Thumbs
that
up.
would.
Great.
How are you, Lydia?
Is
Good.
everyone
How are
doing
you?
okay today?
I'm good. I'm good. Did you receive a message from me?
No.
Direct message?
Oh, I don't think I
Okay,
did.
show me that hat.
Oh, finally got my face.
Hi, Marianne.
I finally worked out how to do it.
Good.
The name
Hi,
of the
Judith.
hat is Tap Dancers.
Judith is in her leopard robe on her leopard couch.
Oh, that's great.
Hi, Lydia.
Did you guys?
Hi,
How many of you have read Sarah's book? I hope you've enjoyed it.
No,
I'm ordering it.
looking
Ordered
forward
mine.
to
Finished.
Great.
Hasn't come yet.
Oh,
Looking forward to reading it.
some of the books that I've sent a few books to people. Oh, we have to talk about what we were going to do, Ari. Oh, you
Oh, I
already
did.
Yeah. But I've sent books out on that 1st of April and they still haven't arrived. So, as I say, okay, see you later, book. Hey,
Someday, if you get this book, you'll love it just as much as I do.
whatever. Anyway,
And I really think, Sarah, I didn't get to thank you for giving me the honor of writing you a foreword, and I don't necessarily think I did you justice, so I feel bad about that, but
no, you did. You wrote beautiful
Great.
words.
There was too much to say.
Thank you, sweetheart. Christine, thank you so much for giving us this opportunity.
It's such an absolute pleasure. I look forward to seeing you after this hellish time is over. Ari, our arms are open for you to visit Melbourne. Sarah Jane, come on down. And to all who joined us, thank you so much. Have a gorgeous day, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Let's do it again.
So delightful.
Bye.